Hello, everybody. This is Mike Griffith on Take Your Best Shot podcast, and I'm here with Hans Okerstrom. Welcome, man.
Hey, Mike. Thanks. Thanks a lot for having me.
One of the things that I really try to get is people that have a passion. You have your daily life and you do your daily career, but you have a passion, and your passion is music. So, and you're in a band. It's a pretty good band. It's called High Octane.
Not a bad band. Local cover band. We do what we can.
Well, you've played some pretty big shows. Tell me about last summer where you were up at the big concert up north.
Last summer was productive. Had an opportunity to play the Moondance Jam, and we were the Friday opener, the afternoon opener for the Kid Rock show. So
No kidding. Did you get to meet Kid Rock?
no, we weren't on that kind of tour bus.
No, you weren't on that one, huh? Well, let me ask you this.
We were on an Uber.
Well, let me ask you this, Hans. You're in the band. You're the guitar player. There's two guitarists, you said.
That's right.
And you guys play cover band, but what kind of music do you play?
We're an 80s, 90s, kind of KQ, 93X kind of cover band group. Everything from Van Halen, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Zeppelin, that kind of stuff. So
Now, you have a normal job during the day,
I do.
and how do you find the time to do the band?
Well, you got to make time, but you want to start out with the day job? The day job is collecting rent and cleaning bathrooms.
I think it's a little more than that, but I'll let you go with that, okay?
On a really big basis. So downtown, you got all those big skyscrapers, and I happen to work on a few of those.
Okay. A little commercial real estate, I have a feeling.
Commercial real estate.
Well, before we get into the total interview here, it is Take Your Best Shot. So it is time.
Is it time to take your best shot?
It is. So, salute.
Saludos.
You don't have to drink it all at once. I'll let you sip it during the whole interview, okay?
Oh, much appreciated.
Cheers. It's Russian vodka, and it's called Russian Standard. It's a real good vodka.
Very smooth.
You like it?
I do.
Ah, good man. All right, so you're a Minnesota boy. You grew up in Minnesota in the town of Farmington.
Born and raised, I just have a funny name.
Well, something about Farmington reminds me of Cowtown. And it was that when you grew up. I remember going to Farmington for a wrestling tournament, and it was like,
Yeah,
you had like a block,
we did.
a city block, and that was it.
That was it. And in your did all the guys keep their clothes on, or was it?
They did. Well, at least the guys that I knew. I mean, who knows what happened in the background.
All right.
But they got a new high school there that's like Taj Mahal of high schools. That's not the high school you went to.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
No,
Definitely not.
you went to an old school.
I did. I think now the high school I went to is now a middle school. But we had a great group of athletes. I was fortunate to play varsity sports and have an opportunity to participate. Also had some great musicians down there, some fantastic people. One of the guys I went to high school with, Cookie Butterlove, Cookie Butterlove.
Wow.
As he's better known as. He's kind of a local keyboard celebrity. Played with CBO for a bunch of years.
Oh, wow.
And some other very talented groups. Just started jamming at home in basements, that kind of thing. And I'll give you a brief history of the musical career.
Yeah, I would love it. Bring it on.
After that, attended college at the University of Minnesota. And music kind of took a backseat to that, and corporate life. I did all the things you're supposed to do. Graduate high school, went to college. During college, I studied abroad. Studied a few broads. Went to studied down in Mexico, studied down in Venezuela.
Wow.
Ended up with a degree in international relations. And
it sounds like you had a few international relations. Cheers. You can't argue with that.
Doing my part to keep the world a cool place.
Good man.
And after that, I came back and I had an opportunity, just through a strange sense of coincidences, went to the Employment Center. At the Employment Center at the University of Minnesota, They had what essentially was a job board. You could grab a recipe card. This is way before internet, all that kind of stuff. And you could grab a recipe card at the job center. And so there was this job that they
But
needed.
what is a recipe?
A
I mean,
recipe card?
yeah, yeah. What is that?
What is that?
I mean,
That's new.
did you like have certain checks, and if you had so many checks, you went to this recipe, and if you went to this recipe, if you had this check?
Mike, you're absolutely right. And if you qualified, if you had enough check marks, you could take that recipe card and go in an interview. So I go down to downtown Minneapolis, and I said, yeah, I'd like to update your database. Okay. And the only reason I got the job is because I was the only guy to show up to wear a tie.
Wow.
and, and,
I love that.
So
What kind of tie was it? Was it a knit tie?
it was a knit. It was kind of what's his name? Back to the Future, Michael.
Oh, I was thinking like the Eddie Van Halen tie. You remember that one in that video we had? It was like a knit squared tie.
It was along those lines.
Okay.
And but I ended up working on a computer and kind of knew my way around a little bit, and got done with things in a hurry. And they said, well, you're done. This is perfect. This is excellent. But we still have you on the books for another 4 months. What else can you do? And I said, well, what do you guys do? Basically, what I see is you call people and you ask them if they want to move into an office building. I can do that. And so I was a cold calling machine, got a bunch of people to rent some office space downtown, and they were happy with that. And after that, I kind of just ended up in a career in commercial real estate.
Now you're an empire builder.
Empire renovator.
A renter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so what kind of, like, is it the skyscrapers downtown? Or is it like anywhere?
More the mid-rise, kind of the old stuff. I guess I've got a talent in refurbishing some of the older stuff. I can't mention it right now, but it's probably one of the largest redevelopment projects in downtown Minneapolis as we speak.
In the history of Minneapolis.
I would say in the history of Minneapolis.
And you're in charge of that.
Well, I'm a piece of a bigger team, but I've become an expert in what they call historic tax credit. Sounds interesting.
It does. Do you want to divulge what that is? Historic tax credit. So you basically take old buildings, redo them.
Redo them, but as part of that effort, there is an interesting program called Historic Tax Credit Syndication, and that's a program. We don't want to tear down old buildings, right? Minneapolis had these older structures through the course of time, through the course of history, that got torn down, and nobody liked that. So do we have a method, do we have a finance method that can help that?
Is it like a TIF?
TIF's a little different, but along the same lines.
Like a redevelopment area, or?
Exactly. But this isn't defined to an area, but and it's not tied to property tax either. It's more of a state credit sponsored by a federal credit, and what we're doing is we're converting this facility into a historic tax or a landmark historic structure.
Right.
So,
Well, since you can't mention it, we're going to move on.
yeah, let's just say it used to be a large department store.
I can take a guess, but I'll leave it off the air. All right, so let's move forward a couple years. You like to travel, and I heard that you and your wife went down to Palm Springs.
Oh, we did a bunch of...
I mean, think about that. I mean, that Palm Springs is a beautiful city. What made that an exciting trip for you?
Palm Springs, it was fun. It was exciting. And God bless my wife, Molly. Absolutely love her. It was kind of one of those rewards trips things, you know.
For her or for you?
Well, for the both of us.
For both of you? All right.
For the two of us, by all means.
Who got the most rewards?
I got to play golf.
All right.
You know, and she got stuck in a bunch of business meetings.
I think you won. You did.
By all means.
So you went and had some drinks. You had fun. I mean, does anything stick out in that trip that you can tell us about?
By all means. There's a difference between flying passenger, between flying coach, between flying business class, first class, all of that. On the return trip, we got to fly private class.
Really?
Absolutely. One of my favorite stories to tell. If
Well,
I
let's
may.
hear it, because I'm
If I
interested
may.
in hearing
If I
this.
may. If I may. So this was back when Coach Mason, Golden Gopher coach, one of my favorites, had just been fired. He just got fired from the University of
Didn't he
Minnesota.
kind of lose like a 30-point lead with a quarter and a half left?
Yeah,
I mean,
they did.
that's
and,
what happens to the Gophers. It's only the Gophers that happens to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Coach, that
Your
one,
alma mater.
my alma mater, and unfortunately, Coach let that get away from him a little bit.
But anyways, I digress.
I'm in the lobby, and I look over at this guy. I said, "My gosh, are you Glenn Mason?" He says, "I sure am." I said, "Oh my gosh, Coach, I'm sorry. I'm a fan of yours. University of Minnesota just lost a heck of a coach." That same night, he is down at the hotel bar, and he waves me over, and he says, "Hey, come on, get over here, you guys. Let me buy you a drink." Well, he's kind of more interested in my wife than he is me, and he pawns me off on his friend Bill.
Bill.
And I'm looking at Bill, and like, oh, all right, Bill. And I asked Bill, "Hey, Bill, where are you from?" "I'm from Minneapolis." "All right, great. What do you do in Minneapolis?" He says, "I own TCF Bank."
Wow. Which of the stadium is named after?
Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
you're Bill Cooper. That's why you're here with Coach. Very nice. And he says, "Yeah, thanks a lot. Coach had a lot of nice things to say that you were complimentary about, and glad we could buy you guys a drink." So we kind of continue this routine for a couple of nights. We meet in the hotel lobby, have a couple of good times.
And each time you got shift the bill and Glenn was with your wife? Is that how it worked?
More or less. I'm not throwing Coach under the bus, but
Well, okay. Well, I'll throw him under the bus.
I ended up more and more with Bill, and Bill he says, "Hey, when you guys going back?" "We're going back tomorrow." "And what time you leaving?" "We're heading out around noon." He said, "So are we." He said, "How would you like to come back with us?" I said, "Come back? What do you mean?" And he said, I've got a private jet down here. Would you like to come back with us?" I said, "Are you serious?" And he says, Mason jumps in. He says, "He's always serious. And if you know what you're doing, say yes." So we say yes. And the next morning, Bill Cooper, Glenn Mason pick us up in a limo, drive us out to the private airport. It's the red carpet, the whole thing. I've never done this in my life. Never been on a private jet. And walk up to the stairs, and it's absolutely first class. And I can't say enough. Bill Cooper's passed away, but was a total, absolute gentleman. Made sure we were well taken care of, fed, everything. Just an absolute gentleman.
To the nines, huh?
To the nines. And now, private jets come in different sizes, different varieties. This guy.
Well, so do men. I'm just saying.
This guy had this thing pimped out big time. And so it was pretty neat. I mean, we basically have gigantic, Captain Kirk chairs, that we're sitting around in and facing one another. And we got Coach Mason to tell a bunch of funny stories. And even Bill Cooper couldn't believe it. He was laughing and engaging conversation. It was, a 3-hour flight back went like that. It was so amazing, so much fun. But to their credit, after we got back, after we landed, handshakes, and for the years, they've stayed in touch and been very kind people.
Well, you might have to help me get Coach Mason on my podcast.
I'll do what I can.
Get him back into Minneapolis, because I'd love to interview him.
I think it's the Big Ten Network, right?
Well, yeah. But that two-back offense that he had just drove me nuts. Drove me nuts.
Yeah, Lawrence Maroney, Yeah.
Well, he had Barber, too.
And,
he had a lot of backs.
Right on.
They're all good, but, got him fired because he didn't have enough W's.
Marion the Barbarian.
Okay, so let's jump into your band. I kind of like that band because I saw some videos of you guys when I did some research on you. And for some 40, 50-year-olds, you guys really rock.
Well,
I mean, you do.
You're
not your typical old guy band.
We dance around, we move around, we shake it. It's a lot of fun. We got some really, really talented musicians. Scotty Miller playing guitar, Derek Tellier playing bass, Tim Berg, lead singer who's been with me forever, Sean Getchy banging it on the drums. It's really cool. It's a special group of people, and not only great musicians, but we're all really really good friends.
Well, that's what counts.
Yeah.
Now, is it true though that you consider yourself the lead guitarist?
Not even in the least, man.
No, you're not the lead guy?
No. Scotty's nice enough to give me my 2 or 3 songs where I can kind of butcher a couple things. But
Oh, no, I bet
fun.
you're way better than that.
Well, Derek and I settled into a groove, and it's fun. But
So you basically do covers.
we are a cover band.
You cover band, but you're all over the place. I mean, I've looked at where you guys play, and it's like the who's who of bars in the Twin Cities area.
Well, and they are, and and unfortunately, it's kind of a dying breed. Remember when you and I were growing up, and there were so many great bars in town. There was Mr. Nibs. There was the Pain Reliever.
Oh, I remember that place. That was great.
I mean, on Pain, what a better name for a bar than the Pain Reliever.
Yep. Well, it was fun as hell there too, though. It wasn't just a great name. It was it drew
It was
an
man,
odd, eclectic crowd, if you know what I mean.
It was, and they had a strip joint next door. And then up in your neck of the woods, there was Roberts on 10. There was the Iron Horse. There was the Mermaid. The Mermaid
I was going to say, did you ever play the Mermaid?
The Mermaid? No, that went all bowling after the.
Yeah,
after
that
we
was.
got into the gig.
They kind of took that whole section of the bar away. It was gone.
And unfortunately.
Made it a sports bar.
And as where we are right now, Mike, if you think about it, this used to be. You've got the turf down the street, and you've got a couple other places, but there used to be some huge dance halls down here. Like back in the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
And this is the area where Buddy Holly used to play, and
Mm-hmm.
the Big Bopper when he came into town, and going back to the 40s, this is where Glenn Miller used to play. And that's where you went to see music, and that's where people went to dance. I know Molly's folks, the two of them met at a dance hall off University Avenue.
No kidding.
Absolutely. And so those dance halls, as big band kind of faded away, and Elvis Presley came into town, and the Beatles came into town, and as music shifted, all of that kind of faded away and left.
Is it still fading?
Well, now you think about it, so we had all of those great bars, right? We had all of those fun places to go to. And they're going away, and they're fading away, and they're fading away. And I think why? You talk to bar owners, why are they going away? Why is rock and roll fading away? There'll always be institutions like First Avenue and, all of that kind of stuff, but it's on the rocks. I mean, one of my favorite places, you gotta believe that Bunkers. Bunkers,
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they're holding on to that little tiny parcel of real estate that's getting gentrified down there. And what a shame if we lose something like that, I mean, just...
Explain gentrified. Not everybody that I know that's listening to this great show will know what gentrification. What does that really mean?
Gentrification of urbanization. What used to be cool is now a Whole Foods.
Exactly.
If I can't get a latte and shop for, an organic dinner, I don't like it.
Gentrification.
Absolutely.
It's not a good word in my book, but
it's not.
It is a word.
If you get a chance, there's a great South Park episode called The Soto Soho. It's absolutely hilarious. A total play on gentrification. Really, really funny. But
are you a big South Park fan?
My kids are. I know more from South Park through my kids than
Do you? Did you ever see the South Park with what's the guy that was in Mission Impossible? Tom Cruise.
Sure.
Where he was in the closet. And he wasn't just in the closet. He was in the closet. I love South Park.
Those guys are remarkable.
They're unbelievable.
Super
Yeah.
funny.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump. I ask every single guest I have here about Donald. Just because I try to get a feel for where we're at today in politics. And I get I love them or I hate them, and I don't see anybody in between. So where do you stand, Hans, on
You know,
Mr. Trump?
I may be that in between guy.
Okay, good.
I absolutely may be that in between guy. To be honest, I didn't vote for him. But I did in Minnesota. We had another Republican candidate, a guy from Utah, and that's how important it was to me. I don't even remember his name.
What do you mean? We only had one Republican candidate for president.
No, we had two. We had two.
Really?
Yep. He ran as a Republican. He wasn't the endorsed Republican, but he ran as a Republican.
Oh, news to me.
Yep. Yep. So we had two. So that was the guy that got my vote.
You and about 22 others, or
yeah, exactly. But you know, there are certain things that I admire. And, you know, admire might be a stretch. You know what he's doing is he's getting in the. I told you earlier. I think he's playing dirty pool, and he's better at everybody else than playing dirty pool to achieve his objectives. And you can cry bloody murder, but overall, I forget the guy who mentioned it the other day in the news. On the other hand, you know, people are feeding right into his deal. You know,
right.
I mean, they're completely overreacting, and it's like,
yep.
You know, come on, this guy's just going to throw this at the wall.
It's a sidetrack.
It's
to throw him over there, and he can do this.
Here's the diversion. I'm going to throw the grenade over here. You know, and you know, pay your attention over here, and I'm going to make sure this gets taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over there, and you know, has you know, anything really gotten completely out of control? You know, I don't know. What I didn't like about him, again, I've studied in Mexico, I've studied in Venezuela. Right now, a family member of mine from Venezuela is living with us. Here legally, has gone through the complete legal process of establishing asylum here. Spent a ton of money, work, and effort doing that. So I would, you know, with the POTUS, you know, disagree on you know, some of his international policies, some of his domestic policies. I do agree with. I'm a pro-business guy. I'm a pro-development guy. But you know, on other stuff we can agree to disagree.
Have you paid any attention to what he's doing with China?
You know, it's saber rattling. It's is he going to get anywhere with it? You know, but God bless him.
I think it's a strategy that's actually going to work.
Yeah.
And what you do is you strangle them, because their economy is really dependent on us. And so when you put tariffs and you block them and you do stuff, you know, they've been stealing the trademarks, they've been stealing copyrights, they've been stealing patents, and what he's doing is putting a death grip on them, because he's not allowing that market to be used. And so when you take that market, then there's no way for them to use it any other way. And so he's putting a death grip on them, and now that's the only reason that I like him, is what he's doing with China. He does other things too, but you know, the China thing, I think, is there's been nobody else within the last 20 years that's had the balls to do what he's doing, because China was raping us.
Agreed. And if you're going to create a competitive advantage that is against the law, against what's fair.
Well, the Chinese play by different rules than we do, not just us, but in the West. And so they needed to be countered, and I think he's doing a good job with that. I really do. He's trying to divert them with North Korea, and he's swooping in, and you know, with Taiwan, and I like that. But it's one of the few things I like about it.
It's aggressive, and I agree. You know, in my world, it's kind of strange. For the first time, if you look at a couple of these big downtown high-rises, a couple of these big downtown structures, there's Chinese owners.
Really?
So yeah. So had never seen that before in a smaller market like Minneapolis. Of course, you know, bigger market, New York, L.A. Always a couple of Chinese investors that.
No, are they major buildings here, or just second tier?
If you look across the
skyline.
The skyline.
They own it.
Well, they're big investors.
Okay. All right, so let's move to a different thing that we haven't hit upon yet. That I would like to just get your opinion um, about is that you're a businessman. What is the economy looking like to you from the real estate side, looking forward for the next 2 years? I mean, that's a long shot, but
Sure. I can only kind of reflect on my world in terms of real estate, but what we hear from time and time again, what's making our economy robust is there's so much cash on the market. So it's kind of two-sided. I think the economy is doing extremely well, but that means money is chasing a lot of investment opportunity. And you can only dump so much money into stocks, into bonds, into investment,
right.
and then people want to start buying brick and mortar, right?
Yep.
I want to buy that skyscraper.
Something solid.
And so, economy as a whole, when you're talking about millions and billions of dollars of that kind of investment chasing money, are things getting overpriced? Okay, so I can only, when you're talking about, I've got literally $4 billion to go out and buy something with. Are you overpaying for something? And so my fear would be for inflation. Are we doing what the home market did, what the residential market did? Is everybody overpaying for things right now because there's just so much cash, so much investment, and not new development, not new opportunities? What's happening with that dollar, and are things getting overinflated? And eventually it will. I mean, it'll turn. I mean, the economy cycles, and can we fluctuate that a little bit to keep from the crash?
Now, are we there now?
Is it?
I mean, think about it, because
well, that's the question. Are we in the sixth inning? Are we in the seventh inning? Eighth inning of the next? It's not. Is it going to be a recession? Absolutely. When does that happen? I don't know. But of course, there's going to be a recession. And I talk to my kids about that. My kids are all excited about working for, 15, $16 an hour. And it's like, wait, hang on.
They live in the city of St. Paul. So let me ask you this question. The St. Paul City Council just passed the $15 minimum wage. Other cities have done it, like Seattle, and I think Portland, Oregon did it too. What do you think of that? From an economic standpoint, not...
I feel sorry for this really, really small business owners. From my side, and I kind of work in a different demographic. I work, on a different demand load, but you can't find a good employee unless you're starting at $15, $16 an hour. I mean, that's the honest to God truth. And I'm even going down to security guards. We hire a lot of security guards, and unless you even start there, we were doing that before the minimum. But I totally appreciate the small businessman, and I don't think the city should have their fingers in that, and especially with the food and bev industry.
Right.
I mean, to not give the tip credit is painful. I think that's horrible. I know a lot of restaurant owners. I know a lot of chefs. I know a lot of cooks, a lot of bartenders, and that's why they couldn't exempt that is beyond belief.
So what you're saying is that food and bev industry, they're not going to get tips, or they include that in their wage?
They wanted to. They said, hey, we'll give us the minimum wage, but we're getting tips and credits ahead of that.
Right. And
we want to be exempt from the $15 minimum wage. Now you go and you're the restaurant owner, you're the bar owner, and you go, I got to pay you 15, 15, 15. And so my whole overhead just exploded. And so half you are going to work a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my theory on that is that people need to provide $15 an hour of value. And I don't think, let's say you're at McDonald's or Burger King, that's a $15 an hour value. You know what I mean by that? And I'm not using semantics here for value meal versus that, but when you have a job and you can't provide $15 an hour of value, the business loses.
Right, you're
You know what I
talking
mean?
about a distribution of wealth.
Right.
I'm-
But what they're doing is putting a flat line on somebody, and if you provide $10 worth of value to the business, guess what?
You're still getting 15.
You're getting 15, but you're going to get 0 pretty soon because the business can't sustain that. And so I don't think it's a good idea when government gets involved in
Dictating wages.
Yep.
And, we need a, and always has been a floor, but it's been a pretty minimal floor. And this is kind of.
my first job was at the Dairy Queen in Shoreview. Have you ever been there?
What'd you make?
Take a guess.
I'll go 275.
$269, not bad. $269 an hour. And those jobs, in my opinion, the fast food, that's not a career. That's a high school job. That's a middle school or, while you're in college. It's not a career. It's not something that you do to be able to raise a family with. You know what I mean? But we're trying to make that job a $32,000 a year job where you can actually raise a family.
Sure.
I don't even think you can raise a family with $32,000 a year.
Independent business owner. My kids over the summer worked for Connie at Connie's Creamy Cone off of Dale.
Really?
Yep. And that's going to kill her.
So what's her solution? Just having less people do more work?
I absolutely. I haven't asked, but I know she is by the hour. Hey, it's slow. Get out of here. Come, go. That kind of thing. But it's other than raising prices, I don't know what she's going to do. But it's pretty tough. What are you going to do? You're not going to go in there and have like an ice cream cone for $5.
Right. Well, you get to the point where the businessman won't want to take the risk because of the cost, the overhead.
Sure.
And you start running them out of town.
Well, and not to mention they just dinged her for more property tax.
Yeah, well, that's, speaking of taxes, where are you at with taxes?
Well, Minnesota, I think, was just ranked highest in terms of a combination of personal income tax and sales tax. I mean, we were number one in terms of most unfriendly. It's ridiculous. And what we're getting back in terms of, again, there's a quality of life issue. I don't mind that if I'm getting what I pay for. And
do you feel you're getting what you pay for living here?
Not even close. Not even close.
Now, are you a St. Paul resident or are you live in the suburbs?
No, I'm a Como Park resident and been here for going on 12 years now. And the roads are abhorrible. We've just gone through.
Are they horrible or abhorrible?
Abhorrible.
Abhorrible. Okay.
Abhorrible.
No. Okay. So they're bad.
They're just beyond bad, and we're not getting what we're paying for. And how can you screw up? That's a long story. I don't want to get.
Well, we can get into it, but you know what? We can move on because there's other things to talk about. I think that we have. I want to go back to Farmington.
Absolutely.
Were you in a farming family?
We were not. We lived out. We lived in the country for a while, and in the backyard, cornfields, the whole thing, snowmobiles, country life, riding bikes down the dirt road.
So, but you came from a mixed family, like you brought two families together, type of thing.
We did.
And how did that work out? I mean, you might have some people that are different and they just kind of grew from that. I mean, so are there any good stories from that angle?
Well, one of our local candidates for U.S. Senate, my stepbrother, Dennis Schuler, God bless him, he works his butt off, but he ran as a ballot candidate against Amy Klobuchar.
And, for just a recent election?
Yeah, and represented the marijuana party.
Now, is he smoke pot?
Oh, yeah, you would say so.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously he probably does, but now how many votes did he get?
He ended up with over 62,000 votes against Amy Klobuchar. Not too shabby. Only 2% of the vote, but...
Well, 2%'s not a bad showing, actually, for the marijuana party.
62,000 of them.
Now, did you vote for him?
You know, I'll plead the fifth on
Plead
that.
the fifth. That's probably the best scenario. And I won't press you on that because I understand the family dynamics that you have there. Now, any other interesting stories about blending a family together? Because that's always interesting to me how you can take two families and put them together, like the Brady Bunch. And there's got to be different people, different ways of doing things, and it kind of turns into spaghetti. But it can work.
It can, and uh, you know, uh, my my nuclear family, as we call it, my basic family, my mother, my father, absolutely great people. I am absolute best friends with both my mom and my dad. Thankfully they're both still alive. Just brought my dad out to Buffalo, New York, to see Joe Bonamassa.
Wow.
That was really cool. And my mother, God bless her, she's still here in Apple Valley. We love her. And then my dad, his second wife, Marlene, was a great inspiration on my life. Her kids, Dennis, I just mentioned. Monica's an absolute professional downtown. Nathan's out in Arizona, I think. He's doing really well. My brother, Jeff, fabulous guy. That's a bunch of kids kind of
Yeah.
shoved together. We all had a fabulous relationship growing up.
But it sounds like you all are successful and well, layered and have good lives.
Yeah,
And that's the important part because some kids don't adjust and they go off.
Yeah, no, we were lucky to have a very close relationship. It was pretty neat. And my wife Molly, and maybe a little shout out to my first wife Katie, the mother of my children. Absolutely fabulous lady. But Molly reminds me of Marlene.
Oh.
As a great stepmother, a great inspiration to my kids. She's a fabulous stepmother, goes out of her way all the time to make sure everybody's having a good time.
Well, I know your wife from a long time ago. I don't know her today.
Rumor has it.
Rumor has it. And I've always enjoyed her. She was always a very happy person and somebody that was always, it was cool to be around. And is she still that way?
She has an addicting personality.
Well, no, Molly was always like on the edge, like fun edge. You know what I mean? She'd push the envelope, but I love people like that. So maybe I saw it differently, but I like her. She's a good girl.
Certainly pushed me to the edge.
Really?
A number of times.
Explain, if you can.
Hey, it wasn't. I've not always been a rock and roll person.
A rock and roll star is what I'm hearing.
Rock and roll star. Thank you. She's been so supportive of that. She thought I was crazy when I did it. As I told you before, I grew up playing a little bit of guitar, and then as an as an adult, I said, I'm going for it. I'm really going for it this time. And she kicked and screamed a little bit, and now absolutely loves the band, and is absolutely one of our biggest supporters. She's so cool. And Molly, I love you. Out of all these years, I was gone. I was traveling. I was on the road, and she was home with the kids, making sure everybody was cool and happy, and holding down the fort back at home. I can't thank her enough. She was absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, I bet you she's your biggest groupie.
Well,
come on, man. There's got to be groupies in the rock and roll world. There has to be.
There are.
You're a good-looking guy. I mean, tell me some lore with some of this stuff. I mean, come on. There's got to be
Well, I'll tell you that when Molly and her sister shows up, those are absolutely the two best-looking fans we have.
Well, I'm sure you have groupies that aren't good-looking that you wish, when they lifted their top, you were like, you took your hand off and went like that. Any stories like that, or am I beating down the wrong bush?
Well, just a quick story. I mean, one of the funniest ones we had.
I knew there was one.
We were up in Brainerd. We're having a good time, and this is back another part that's unfortunately closed. We're at the Blue Ox, and
the Blue Ox.
The Blue Ox in downtown Brainerd, And we're doing "Fight for Your Right," Beastie Boys song, and there's a cut in the song that says, "And your mom took away your best porno mag."
Yep.
And out of the blue, this guy comes out with an armload. He'd been waiting all night for this. I don't know where it came from. He's got an armload of like 1970s Playboys, Penthouse, Hustlers, the whole thing. Throws them all up in the air, and the dance floor is going nuts, and they're all opening up the centerfolds. They're throwing them up on stage, and these are vintage 70s.
Why? What was the drive?
He couldn't get rid of them at the local bookstore.
So what did the centerfolds look like? A little different than today's?
They were a little hairy, Mike.
Well, that seems to be the path.
But they were robust women.
Well, you can't argue with that, though. I mean, at a certain point, that was the. I'm at a loss for words, which generally never happens to me. Well, I mean, how do you follow that up? I mean,
I'm happy to be an '80s kid.
Well, we got to see some stuff that I was talking to. I had Pat Cox on here, and believe it or not, he was in the porn industry, and that's his real name. And we were talking about that, and I just decided to bring up that, back in my day, it was Debbie Does Dallas, and they were all full bush. And he was like, oh, that's so gross. And he, because he's 28, he has no idea what that was like back in the day. But, hey, I bet you when you were in Venezuela, you saw some serious 70s and 80s look. No?
I can tell you that there's a reason the women from Venezuela win Miss Universe
they're beautiful
every other year, incredibly beautiful. And I was there in 1993. And in 1993 in the United States...
That's when Hugo Chavez was still the leader, right?
No.
Or was this before?
Way
before?
Yeah, it was
okay.
It was a democracy. And here in the United States, the fashion was women couldn't get a sweater big enough or jeans big enough, and you saw nothing. And everything was covering everything.
Well, I saw something. It's just not what I wanted to see.
Well, let's just say on a daily basis. And I go down to Venezuela, and I mean, you couldn't have painted on the jeans any tighter. Heels, jeans, tight sweaters. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, these women are...
So why did you come back?
Good question, Mike.
I mean, think about that.
Why did I?
Why did you come back?
I
would have said, hey, I'm going to stay another 6 months.
I was tempted to stay. I got an offer to stay, but, I decided to come back.
Better, your logic overtook your emotions.
It did.
Especially the below-the-belt emotions, I would imagine.
Yeah. I did well down there. I kept my nose clean. In Mexico, in Mexico I had a great time. I partied too much.
Where were you in Mexico?
I was out of Cuernavaca, Mexico, and we took from Cuernavaca, which is about 2.5 hours southwest of Mexico City.
Okay. So you must be fluid in Spanish.
A veces.
Sí.
A veces,
Sí, señor.
And para ti?
No español. I know very little. You know what I know from Spanish? Cheech and Chong movies.
The Cheech and Chong movies.
Do you remember Cheech and Chong movies?
Absolutely.
Up in Smoke.
Pussy lovers.
Yeah. Bendejo. Remember stuff like that?
Sure.
Que pasa, bendejo? That's the stuff I know.
Sure.
And,
you know how to swear in Spanish.
Yeah, well, I followed Cheech's lead because I remember I had a friend named Brad Fagerberg, believe it or not, and Molly knows Brad.
Okay.
And he would sit there and swear at people in Cheech language. We called it Cheech language because he didn't even know what he was saying, but he knew it was bad, And so that's the Spanish I know. And I've got plenty of friends that know Spanish or that are from Spanish-speaking countries, and I always do that, que pasa bendejo. And they do what you're doing. They all laugh at me like, where did you get that? And I said, Cheech and Chong.
In case you don't know what he's saying, how's it going, asshole?
Cheers. And I don't know if you remember, but that was in the Up in Smoke movie where he's taking a piss, and that's what he says to the cop that came up to him. So, all right, so when you were in Mexico, you had a lot of fun there. I mean, tell me about the fun there because
I
was
did.
that on the Gulf side or the Pacific side?
It was on the Pacific. Well, Cuernavaca was interior.
Oh, okay.
And then for vacation weekends, we were about a 3.5, 4 hour bus ride to Acapulco, and so that was always crazy. That was fun, and way before you were in danger of getting kidnapped or shot
Or beheaded.
Exactly. Excuse me. And
that was a Budweiser burp.
and then so we get the 10-day break. And we take a long bus ride, and we go down to a place called Puerto Escondido.
Wow.
And at the time, that is the middle of nowhere. But the deal with Puerto Escondido was they've got the Mexican pipeline. They hold the World Surfing Championships down there. It's world class. These gigantic waves about 15, 20 feet high come in, and people from around the world go down to Puerto Escondido to surf.
Did you jump on a board?
Not a surfboard. I did a boogie board, and damn near broke my neck.
Wow.
It's that big. It's
that powerful.
Oh, that powerful. It's crazy. It scared me. A couple of guys I went down there with, they didn't know what they were doing. They thought, oh, we can water ski. We can, we know how to do this. They rented a surfboard. Rented some big $2,000 surfboard, and in 3 minutes that thing was snapped in half. Didn't know what they were doing.
Who paid the bill for that one?
Not me.
Daddy or mommy?
yeah. With those guys that I'm with. Yeah.
I went surfing in California on Huntington Beach.
Yeah, you good?
No.
Me neither.
I spent 2.5 hours trying to surf, and I got up 3 times. That lasted maybe 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so you're on top of it, and next thing you know, you're bailing.
My experience is the same thing.
It took me a long time even to get on the board. That's not an easy sport.
No.
I mean, to lift yourself on top of that board and to jump up like a cat from water, it's not easy.
No.
I thought I could do it. I was a wrestler, so you have a lot of body control. No. It didn't work. I tried, and I couldn't do it.
And being Minnesotans, I grew up water skiing. I could slalom ski. I could do, anything. But no, get up on a surfboard, that's a whole new effort.
And these waves in Huntington Beach were like 6-footers, so they weren't like the world beaters.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the problems that I had, and I don't know if you had this, but I had a problem timing the wave. Where all of a sudden you're paddling, and all of a sudden you're going to jump on it, and the wave's gone. And you just exerted a shitload of energy, and it's gone.
Wave's gone, or you're getting tubed.
Well, I did that a couple times too, and that sucks. All right, so about Mexico. How long did you stay there?
Sweet Mexico.
And then do you ever go back to these places again?
Go back all the time.
Do you?
Absolutely.
Do you have friends down there? Do you remember the people remember you?
Yeah, and we've kind of, our new home down in Mexico has been Zihuatanejo.
No, I've never heard of it.
Absolutely. It's kind of the sister city to Ixtapa.
Okay.
Ixtapa is more that's more the resort high-rise development area. And about 10 miles down the road is the sleepy little bay of Zihuatanejo. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So it's built into the mountains, the high-rises and all this kind of stuff. But there's no high-rise development. It's just little boutique hotels built into the mountain. It's absolutely beautiful. Very enchanting.
Now, you and Molly take the kids down there, or is it just you and Molly, or how do you do that?
We did one year, and absolutely blew the guys away. They were extremely happy.
You ever thought about taking the band down there?
Would love to, but
think about that, because there's got to be a market for an American band that plays rock and roll like you guys. There has to be. You got to get your agent to get you booked down in Mexico.
Good idea.
Think about that. And then you could expense all the food, and you could expense it all as part of travel expense.
Absolutely.
Not that I would know that, but I'm just telling you that would be a good gig.
Hauling a Marshall and a Les Paul down there would be a lot of work. But
well, you know what? If you get the right airline, like Delta Airlines, they would do it for you, no problem. I've actually shipped, who was it? In one ship, because I work at Delta part-time on Saturday and Sundays. And one day we shipped a TV show. I can't remember. It was like National Geographic, right? Well, there's a lot of equipment. And it's heavy, it's bulky, it's all in the plastic things. And then we also had a band. And it was a band that was, oh, what the hell? What's his, from Guns N' Roses?
Slash.
No, the lead singer. What's it? Axl Rose.
Sure.
It was Axl Rose's band. He called it Guns N' Roses, but it wasn't Guns N' Roses, right? And we shipped their stuff.
Without Slash, it ain't Guns N' Roses.
No, I agree with you. Slash is Guns N' Roses. Although Axl was pretty good. I always liked that.
Sure.
You know,
Little
and
snake
he sang great, but he kind of he busted that band. You know, if I'm in a band and some guy tries to screw my girlfriend and does, I think that's fisticuffs. But I think Slash thought the same thing.
Right on.
I mean that broke the bond.
The bond.
And plus, you know,
and let me ask you,
heroin also had a problem with that too.
a little bit. What was the first concert you went to?
I went to George Thorogood
Ah.
at the Orpheum in Minneapolis with an old friend of mine, Tony Pates. We went down there. I think we were 15 or 16. Well, we had to be 16 because he drove and he had just gotten his license.
All right.
So it was October of like 1980 was the first time I saw it. And it was an interesting experience because Tony was like this, you know, little muscle guy, and he's like, you know, tough and quiet, and he starts dancing, you know, to George Thorogood, like doing all of this stuff, and I looked over at him going, oh, okay, well,
a little out of a character for
out
Tony?
of character, but guess what? If he can do it, so can I. So we both started getting into it, you know, and it was fun. It was the first time. In fact, you won't believe this. I'm glad you brought this up. One of the interesting stories about that is that I told a friend of mine that I worked with 15 years ago. I said, went to the George Thorogood first concert. He goes, well, I went to that concert too. And he was talking about how his friend got into a fight, and he kicked the guy, but his shoe came off. It was one of these Nike high tops. Remember the old Nike high tops
Sure.
from the 80s? The white with the gray swoosh? And he goes, it kicked and it went over the top of the walkway and it went down and he lost his shoe for the whole night. And I looked at him and said, you got to be fucking kidding me.
You ended up with the shoe?
No. Tony and I were down having some beers down below and his shoe hit him in the head. And guess what kind of shoe it was?
It was a Nike high top.
It was. And it hit him in the head as he's taking a beer, and we saw the shoe and we just tossed it, and he's like, you know, what the fuck, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I cannot believe out of all the people that I finally found somebody that saw that. It wasn't the guy, but it was his friend. All right? And what are the chances? I mean, 1 in a million?
As they say, Mike, destiny is a complicated thing.
Who's they?
I stole that from David Lee Roth.
Okay, well, destiny is complicated because when his name is Jim Simonette, when he told me that story, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that was. I can't prove it. There's no way to prove this, but I believe that was the shoe because we were in the same spot and everything kind of fit, and so that was George Thorogood.
Wow.
And crazy things, you know. Can you believe that?
My first concert, Van Halen, the Fair Warning Tour, 1981.
Wow. And where that was at the Civic Center, right?
It was at the Civic Center.
Yep.
Exactly. Absolutely mind-blowing.
What was mind-blowing about it? And where were your seats? Because sometimes it dictates where you sit.
Lower level, we were to the right side of the stage as you're looking at the stage, about halfway up, and it was right around 4th of July weekend. And my dad was cool enough, so I introduced my dad to the Van Halen record.
Wow.
And it was kind of a big deal because we had the stereo, the family stereo, and you couldn't touch the family stereo system.
But was he like a Jimi Hendrix guy or more like a Beatle guy?
He was both, as
Really?
a matter of fact. So my dad, I got to give a shout out to him, was so cool. He had all of the Beatle records. And I was a little kid. That was my first love, was the Beatles. And we're riding in the family station wagon and listening to the radio. And I'll never forget, Can't Buy Me Love comes on the radio. And I'm bopping my head, and I said, wow, this is...
Can you sing a verse?
I'll buy you diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel all right. My dad, he sees me bopping my head, and he says, hey, you like the Beatles? I said, is this the Beatles? Yeah.
And your 1972 station wagon?
Absolutely.
I love it.
And he says, I have the Beatles. So we go home, and he plays the Beatles. And so I grew up total Beatles fan. And, you know, obviously things progress. And,
Can I tell you something, Hans?
Please.
I grew up a Rolling Stones fan.
All right, not bad.
And
not bad.
When you hear Midnight Rambler, you never want to hear the Beatles. But I like the Beatles. I like them. But the Stones were just more, they were the twist in the knife back then.
Sure.
To me. They weren't fluff. They were more of the, you know, Gimme Shelter and all that stuff was pretty intense.
Hey, I'm a fan of both.
Sympathy for the Devil.
I'm a fan of both.
And then, I'm not trying to enter on your story because we're going to come back to it. But then when I heard Led Zeppelin for the first time, everything changed.
Right on.
I don't know about you, but when Zeppelin came into my brain, it was like, the Stones are good. The Beatles were okay. But Zeppelin blows the Doors down. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but they were the thing.
Oh, Jimmy Page is one of my favorites. That guy is phenomenal.
He is. Now, do you know how to play the 12-string?
I don't. I've played a 12-string before. I don't know how to play it well, but I've played one.
Now, is it hard?
It's not too different from a regular guitar.
It's just going up and down?
Yeah,
and
I mean...
What's it called, a bridge?
Well, you're not... There's just adjoining strings that are much smaller, so you're kind of playing the two at the same time. So.
Okay. So let's go back to your story. The Beatles.
The Beatles. Grew up a huge Beatles fan. Was all about the Beatles, and then some kid drops a Van Halen record on me. I'm like, you know.
Now, what was that? Do you remember that song?
Oh, absolutely, Running with the Devil.
Wow, that's their best.
You put the needle down on that thing, and boom, 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 boom. I mean,
It's
just
yeah.
It was, what the heck is this? And then, of course, you know, he goes into Eruption, he goes into You Really Got Me, all of that. So it was like, what in the world is this? This is
Eruption is a great song. I'm going to tell you a story about that in a minute, but keep going.
So incredibly cool. So I said, I got to get this. And so you save your lawnmower money, you save all this, and you go down to the little record store at the local mall, and oh, please.
You know, it is take your best shots with Russian Standard. I hope you like the Russian Standard, Hans.
I'm an advocate of the Russian Standard.
You are a man of good taste because Russian Standard is the best vodka out there.
Let me say that Russian Standard is now going into my liquor cabinet.
Fantastic. I think it's one of the best, and we're going to try to get them as our sponsor. So anybody out there that knows Russian Standard,
they're fools not to.
Well, absolutely. So continue with the Van Halen.
I'm blown away and save up my lawnmower money, you know, whatever.
And how old are you at this point? 15, 14, 12?
13.
Okay.
And
13-year-old from Farmington. You got to remember that.
Dad, I got this record.
And it was an actual LP. It wasn't like a cassette or anything. It was an LP.
For sure.
Do you still have it?
Absolutely.
Nice, man. Good job.
And my dad's, you know, he's kind of, yeah, all right, let's see what you got here, kid. He throws it on. He's blown away.
Really?
He's blown away. And now my dad saw the Beatles at Met Center. He saw Hendrix at Met Center. I mean, guy of great musical taste. He had everything from BTO, the Doobie Brothers, Janis Joplin. Grew up playing in a folk band of all
Did he
things.
have Nazareth?
Nazareth never met.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That
Nazareth's
wasn't in
like
the
pushing
mix.
the envelope outside. But I thought I'd ask.
But lately I am the proud owner of his
Collection?
collection. So,
Don't get rid of it.
oh, never, absolutely not. Drives Molly nuts when I drink too much and play records, but
She probably deserves it. She married you after all. I mean, come on. What did she expect, right? You know, you're not going to sit on the couch and watch a football game. You're going to go in and rock and roll.
I am going to play an LP and enjoy it from front
So
to back.
you actually still have
a turntable.
a turntable.
Right
and
on.
it spins, and
Right
you
on.
put the diamond on it or whatever the hell it is, and you rock.
Put the needle on the
The
record.
needle.
And there's nothing better. You know what I think is missing from music? It was that experience. When you bought an album, Mike, you remember,
Oh,
you bought an
you
album.
are preaching to the choir, Hans.
You bought an album and you looked at that thing.
You read it from cover to
Cover
back.
to cover, you
Everything. The
opened up
pictures,
sleeve,
everything.
And you took that whole thing in. And the record told a story. It was
Absolutely.
absolutely phenomenal. You had
Yeah.
an experience, right?
You did.
It was
Downloading it on iTunes or whatever, that's not an experience.
No. You don't get to touch it. You don't get to feel it. You don't get to smell it. It was like, man.
But
this
when
is-
you also got to read the lyrics.
you got
When
to,
you read something and it was right there, and you read the next song, and many of the great bands, one song led to the other. You know, I'm talking Led Zeppelin here, right, man.
the album told a story.
That was a complete story.
Right on.
You know,
right
when
on.
when Led Zeppelin's talking about Golem, well, they made a big movie about that.
Yeah, wasn't that
I
the
don't-
Hobbit thing?
You know, a little Hobbit thing, you know. But there was a movie. Led Zeppelin was singing about that 30 years before, and it was the same thing. And it's huge. I agree with you. The albums were just fantastic.
And it's still it's so much fun to do that. And you bring over friends, you know, that haven't done it in so long. Come over to my place, man. We'll have a record party. We'll pull out the Russian Standard. We'll have vodka and listen to some tunes.
Well, let me ask you this, or let me tell you this, actually, it's not ask. You know, I'm dating this gal from Russia. Her brother used to have to pay like a month's salary to get an album. So when he
and
came,
a pair of Levi's.
well, he couldn't even get those. But when he came over here and we started dating, I said, "Oh, I have a bunch of albums. You want them?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know, you know." And I said, "Well, it's Led Zeppelin and it's, you know, all these bands." And he was like, "Yeah." Because in his life, those were so valuable. And he still plays with the turntable and he listens to these bands, you know, and to give him those was something I cherished, because they were sitting in a box, but this guy cherished them. He put them on, and it was like a religious experience, you know, because it might have been the first time he listened to that album on a turntable. And you have the little, you know what I mean? And it was, I was so happy that I gave him that, because he could listen to this stuff, and it was like,
And
it
truly
blew me away.
And appreciate it.
Appreciate it beyond what I could ever appreciate it. Because for us, it was just go to the, you know, the Sound of Music. What the hell was the music store called?
Well, yeah, you had Sound of Music. You had the Wax Museum.
The Wax Museum is what I was thinking of. Well, the Wax Museum, we just go down and put our $8-10 down, and boom. But for him, he couldn't get them, but he wanted them, right? And then when he came here, he just started collecting one after another. But then I even gave him the Rolling Stones Goat Head Soup. You ever heard that album?
Oh, wow.
It's a phenomenal album.
What a gift.
Yeah. You know, I gave him albums that were Exile on Main Street. If you haven't heard of that album, you don't know music.
All right.
It is one of the greatest albums ever put out, and it's by the Rolling Stones. So let's get back. We're getting off track now. It might be because it's our third shot.
Where
but
were we?
But this is the premise of Take Your Best Shot. We're talking just two guys sitting down talking about, you know, whatever comes up. So you went to the Van Halen. You didn't tell me if your dad liked him.
So
Was he blown away?
We're kids. We're kids, and obviously no internet at the time, no nothing, and KQRS had a call-in number, like call into our deal, and it was a pre-recorded message, and it was, here's what's coming into town. You know, this concert, this concert, this concert, and on July, blah blah blah, Van Halen. Buy your tickets now. So I was like, oh my dad, hey, Van Halen's coming in town. Will you get us tickets? I thought, and he said, no problem. He said, invite 3 of your friends. We're all going.
Wow.
So super cool. He goes out. He buys
Your dad's the rock star, not you.
Right? Yeah. PW, Paul Warren Okerstrom.
Nice.
Absolutely. We call him PW. Love him to death. And super cool. And brought me and a handful of friends to and quite frankly, what I think is the best tour ever was the Fair Warning tour. It was just absolutely phenomenally awesome.
Did it blow you guys away?
Oh yeah, I mean we're a bunch of kids and like, wow, that's Eddie, that's Dave.
And was that when you decided to start playing the guitar, or was it before?
I wanted to play before,
But did you?
In bits and pieces, but I grew up. Our family, we had an organ sitting in the living room.
Like an actual organ, not a piano, an organ.
An organ. So, the church organ, and so I grew up.
I've always laughed at an organ. Is it a heart, kidney, or is it an organ?
Well, Molly can tell you all about my organ.
I don't really want to know about it, but I had a guy on the show that actually told me about his organ.
It was a championship organ.
Cheers.
But
he got paid for his organ. Have you been paid for yours?
I have not.
Not yet.
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Neither have I.
But so we have this organ sitting in our living room, and
pipes and everything, or just like
just an
underneath,
upright, an upright.
Okay.
And
I'm actually blown away that you had an organ. I've never heard of that. That's kind of strange.
So it sat there doing nothing, and I'm in 3rd grade, and I've got this smoking hot homeroom teacher. She's extremely attractive. You got the good looking.
She's probably like 22, 23. We're fresh out of college, and
Mrs. Borgen. She's absolutely Borgen. Absolutely, or Berglund. Excuse me, Mrs. Berglund.
So, absolutely, just to give you an idea, she's probably about 85 or 90 now. I wonder, is she still smoking hot?
So at the time she was.
Okay.
And it's kind of that first day of class and introductions, and she gives a little overview of herself, and she says, I'm an organ player, I'm an organ teacher, blah blah blah.
You didn't invite her over, did you?
I did. So I said,
I love it.
Hey, we have an organ, and I want to take organ lessons from you. So
no.
I was the only, Mike, I'm the only kid.
You're kidding me. You're a player. I can tell. At 3rd grade, you're playing your teacher. I love it.
So in third grade, she drove, and honest to God, she drove an AMC Gremlin.
Nice.
And I was the only kid that got to go out of school, hop into her Gremlin. It's like, so long, suckers. I'm going home with Mrs. Berglund to take organ lessons.
No. How did those lessons go? Because being in a Gremlin was kind of cool. I've been in a Gremlin one time. I don't know if I'm going to tell you the story, but a Gremlin, for the people that don't know what a Gremlin is, look it up, because a Gremlin is a one-of-a-kind vehicle.
One of a kind, world famous for, what was the movie? Wayne's World.
Wayne's World, yeah. I'm going to tell the story because I just thought a correlation to your wife. And when I grew up, I had a guy that lived behind me. His name was Dave Nelson. And Dave Nelson had a golf club. And we were playing golf in our backyard, which we didn't have huge backyards, but we were playing golf. He takes a full swing, and it slips out of his hand, and I'm sitting right behind him. And the golf club hits me directly right here. And I have a scar right here to prove it. And it dropped me. I'm like, 7th grade, 6th grade, drops me. And I'm on my back. I'm out cold. The woman across the street is a nurse at Ramsey County Hospital. And I'm bleeding. My mom told me when Dave went and got her And she came out. My eyes were closed and my sockets were full of blood because it was just bleeding so much on both sides. And the woman across the street, what car did she own? A Gremlin. And that was my emergency ambulance, was the Gremlin.
It was the Gremlin.
It took me to the hospital, and I got stitches. And
made
boom.
it all the way there.
But the correlation to your wife is I think that Dave Nelson eventually dated your sister-in-law.
Oh, Kimmy.
I don't know. I just kind of like had that thought. We may cut this out, Hans. But you know how you have these thoughts about your youth? And sometimes they just go awry, and sometimes they're good.
They go awry.
This might not be a good one. But anyways, you were talking about the organ and Miss Berglund.
Miss Berglund, I'm at home.
Now,
and
how
she's
hot was she?
9 out of 10. Scott.
Wow, not bad for a teacher.
9 out of 10.
What do you think she looks like now?
Well, as you previously mentioned, she probably, I don't know.
But you never know. She could be the smoking hot 75-year-old that.
But she was a phenomenal teacher, and she gave me the basics of music, and it was a bunch of polkas, and it was a bunch of gospel music and that kind of stuff, and I could play the shit out of a polka. But I understood it gave me music theory. It gave me, okay, I get this, how this relates to that. And it's still something I think about from time to time. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool.
Well, that was the basis of your music career, your
really
music
was.
stuff.
Yeah, Mike, it really was. And so then when I started playing guitar, even in high school, I was like, oh, how does this relate? We still had the organ, and this is this note here, and this is how this lays out on a fretboard. Well, it's the same kind of thing. You got to do it differently.
Yeah, so I grew up with a brother that played about 7 different instruments. He could pick up anything and start playing
he was really talented.
Yeah, he could just a saxophone, a piano, a guitar, and I played nothing. You know how you were younger, you had to do a flutophone in like 3rd grade? I didn't want to play that.
The recorder.
The recorder. I was like, nah. I just did it, whatever, just to get done.
Couldn't even get Popeye the Sailor Man done?
No, I couldn't. I just don't have that mental makeup, I don't think. So I never did it. My mom bought me a guitar for Christmas. I was like 7th grade, right? And I look at this guitar, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with this, right? Now, you would have probably had a different response. I'm like, oh, okay, and I put it in the corner of my room. Never picked it up. Never. And then one day my brother, who's a year younger than me, comes up, can I have your guitar? I'm like, yeah, you can take it. Whatever you want, man. He was playing that within a couple days, just strumming. He just figured it out.
Sure. And
I think that there's a mentality or a brain, like the side of the brain that you think.
Natural musicality.
There has to be, because for me, I probably went like, nah, I don't want to do this. I love music. I love the ability of others, but it's not something that I want to do because I don't know how to do it, and I don't want to learn how to do it. But I appreciate people that do. And so what I think from like you and let's say my brother, you just have that natural, like you said, you converted it from the organ to the guitar. I could never do that. Never. Because I just don't get it. I don't understand the music. I mean, there's people that can understand it by sound, and there's people that read music, and I don't have either.
Yeah, well, then try singing, man. That's really hard. I got all.
Well, I can sing.
Oh,
you should hear me sing.
Awesome.
Just I can't remember the words.
Well, that's half the battle.
It's like I have to have words in front of me, but I can sing.
Fabulous.
So let me ask you one more question before we go, because I think we're at an hour 15. I try to get these down to 50 minutes, so we've been talking good. What is the one thing that you want to do that you haven't?
Oh, great question.
Because you've probably, you're at the age where you've done a lot, and you've experienced a lot, because we all have at this point. But what's that one thing that you just say, I gotta do? You gotta do it.
I gotta do it.
Is there? Because for me, I have a couple, but for you, I want to hear what that is.
Man, great question. I've been really, really blessed. I gotta say, I've been extremely blessed with, my professional career and getting an opportunity to play with some fabulous musicians. I've had some great experiences. I work with a lot of great agents. I never in my life would I have believed when I started playing and threw together a band that I'd have agents calling me and wanting to book us. I never in my wildest dreams thought that would happen. And so what do I want to do next? What haven't I done? Mike, I'm really fortunate. And what's left on the platter? I honestly don't know, man.
Really?
I've got a loving, beautiful wife, Molly, who supports everything I do. And being on an opportunity like this, on an interview with you, is super cool. Thank you.
Oh, man, thank you. You've been great.
And I just, as long as I'm healthy, as long as I'm kicking, as long as I'm still doing what I do, really, really super cool. I don't want to screw it up.
You know what? I have a feeling you won't screw it up. You won't screw it up. But you got to tell me, there's got to be something in there. You're like, should I go here? Should I do this? I mean, there's got to be something, man. Come on, Hans. There's got to be something.
On the retirement bucket, I've always got Zaywat on the mind.
What is Zaywat?
Zaywat, Neo, Mexico.
Okay.
If I could settle down there, as you mentioned, I gotta give a handout to the Mexican cover bands. Those guys are phenomenal, crazy good.
I think you guys could be better though.
Well, we bring a little American edge to it, but they're really, really talented musicians down there.
When I think of Mexican cover bands, I think of Japanese cover bands.
Trust me, they are way better.
Really?
That. Yeah.
Okay. I'll trust you on that one.
Yeah, I've seen some absolutely phenomenal. Got up on stage with a few of them. Super, super cool guys.
All right. Well, there's got to be something though. Come on, man. I'm
something
driving you because what if you haven't done?
Something I haven't.
I mean, do you want to get on and do a show with Eddie Van Halen?
Eddie's cool.
Or would he scare you? Like you don't feel you have the talent, or because he's phenomenal, or he was. I don't know if he still is.
And I've heard a few times. It's like be aware of meeting your heroes. Dave Roth was always a big time hero for me. He's gotten a little weird lately.
A little.
He's gotten
a little.
He's gotten a little weird. I'd still like to meet Dave.
So who are your heroes in your life?
My dad.
That's a good hero.
Absolutely, he's absolutely phenomenal. Some of the people I've worked with in the past are absolutely phenomenal. They've coached me, all along. I work with some absolutely amazing people.
But who's your hero?
My hero, my kids. I love them. They're great. I got Dane. I got Drew. They're absolutely great. I love to see them work and develop and watch them grow. It's so cool.
It is cool to see your kids grow. Now you've got the 2 kids?
I do. I got 2 boys, Dane and Drew.
All right. Well, I have 4.
Congratulations.
Can you believe that?
Man. Wow.
Yeah. And the oldest one's 26 and the youngest one's 20.
Yeah.
So they're at that point.
But yeah, if I could ever hit the big time stage, it'd blow me away. If I was to share a stage with somebody, that would be super cool. Man, we went out and saw Joe Bonamassa. That guy, so awesome. I'd play 3 chords.
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to drive at. Is like there's got to be something that you go, wow, that would blow your mind away if you did it.
It would be cool. To me, to be able to sing better and to do something like that would be really cool. But I guess, okay, so what's the Mount Everest for me? Where am I going? Man, good question. I want to go out on top, and have.
What's on top, though?
What's on top?
I'm not talking about your wife. I'm just talking about. Molly probably wouldn't appreciate that if I put that in there, but we just might.
Well, you should.
Yeah. What's on top? Because I'm trying. What part of this show is I'm trying to drive at the passion of people, and they're driven by more than just money. They're driven by more than success because I think it's experience. And we all want to experience something, and everybody's different. But what is it that you want to experience?
Man, if I could do, wow, if I could do anything, well, you know,
What would it be?
man, I've been so blessed. What would I do? All right, let's. So my favorite city, Zewattneo, has got a gigantic bay down there, and they've, from time to time, they do a gigantic stage set down there, right on beachside. I mean, you're there, you're overlooking the ocean, everything. You know, to do a gig down there, and let's say, wow, this is really cool.
That sounds cool, actually.
It,
Just
it,
by the way you put it in front of me.
Yeah, it's really neat, and to play oceanfront, you know, in front of Zewattneo, and let's say I'm going to bring up my favorite guitar player, and out of the blue, Eddie Van Halen shows up, and we get to play, one of the best songs I'm best at is probably "Ain't Talking About Love," and to trade licks with Eddie, beachside.
Now we're starting to go into fantasy, though.
Yeah, this is.
This is
Well, you asked for it. So.
no. I asked what you wanted to do, not about a fantasy. Because we're starting to go fantasy like, because that's never going to happen. I don't even think those two guys talk anymore.
They don't. It's unfortunate, but yeah, no. I think.
So let me give you an idea what I'm driving at. For me, and people are going to hear this and they're going to go, "This dude is weird," right? But part of me wants to just be on the island of Santorini, on a cliff, and just take a piss over the cliff. Because you're sitting there looking at a beautiful island, taking a whiz. To me, that would just be like, I'm in heaven. You know, I'm here, I'm seeing beauty, and taking a leak isn't the part of it. It's just that you're there, and it's beautiful, and experiencing the sun, and seeing the blue ocean, the white buildings. And I've not been there. I'm going there, but that's what I want to do is experience all these things. That's why I go to like Croatia and the Czech Republic, where most people don't go.
Sure.
You know, those are the places that drive me. You know, and so when I go to a new place, I go, wow, the people,
The culture,
the culture, the geography, all of that stuff is a turn on to me. So for me, it's about going to that next place. That's my drive. So what is your drive?
Well,
I mean, what is that? I know that we both have families. We both love them to death. We both have coworkers. We love them to death. But what is that thing inside of Hans that's driving you to the next thing? What do you want to do?
It's all about emotions, right? It's all about senses. And so you got the five senses, right? You hear, you feel, you taste,
Hear is one of them too. Sound. Just
absolutely. And so when you do all of that and you put it all together, I want one chance to check out. Just one chance to say I'm finishing on top and be done. And
now, what's on top though? That's you brought it up earlier, and I gave you a quip. But what does that mean, like on top? Because everybody, it's different. You know what I mean? Somebody wants to be the richest. Somebody wants to be the most famous. Somebody wants to be the best looking. Somebody wants to be this. What is on top to Hans Okerstrom?
I want to leave everything better than I found it. And I've done that with a number of commercial real estate projects. I want to leave that on top and say, I left this 10 times better. I left this community 10 times better than when I found it, and leave on top. And then go down to the Baja.
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
I want to go down to the Baja, and there's a place. You know where Cabo San Lucas is?
I do.
Okay, so Cabo San Lucas is at the very
tip.
End of the tip.
The end.
Okay, and Cabo's all right. It's completely commercialized now. It used to be a cool place, but north of that, the Baja is so desolate. I want to get in a car and just drive.
Beautiful.
Just go. And put the top down and put my favorite music in and just go.
Nobody hassling you. You just go.
Just go. And what's in front of us? I don't know. Tourist don't know where he's going. Traveler don't know where he's been.